So for today's video, we're going to be talking about fractions, mixed numbers, and improper fractions. We'll start with fractions. We'll talk about how to simplify fractions. We'll then also talk about improper fractions and converting improper fractions to mixed numbers. Okay, so for a fraction is a part of a whole. And usually they're composed of a numerator and a denominator. For example, 24 over 30 is a fraction, where the top number is the numerator and the bottom number is the denominator. Assuming I can spell correctly. Okay. Now, one thing we have to keep in mind, but I'm sure you're already aware of this, is that a fraction is less than 1. So any fraction where it's any number over any number is less than 1 if the numerator... Actually, let me change something here. I'm going to replace the top number with NUM and the bottom with DEN. Numerator, denominator. If the numerator is less than the denominator. Okay, that's just one thing. We'll be talking also about improper fractions where they're the opposite. Improper fractions is where the numerator is greater than the denominator. But for right now, for the first part of this video, we'll be talking about fractions where the numerator is less than the denominator. And so let's talk about simplifying fractions. That's one of the most common things we do with fractions. And so I'm going to use my little text function here. And so simplifying a fraction involves writing out the prime factors of the numerator and the denominator, and then canceling like primes. Okay, a lot of words there. So simplifying a fraction involves writing out the prime factors of the numerator and the denominator, and then canceling the like primes. So we're going to use 24 over 30 as our example. 24 over 30. And we know from our previous video that we can find prime factors. And so the prime factorization of 24, we know there's 4 times 6. 4 has 2 and 2, and 6 has 2 and 3. If you're confused about that, you can watch my previous video on prime factorization. But 24 can be written as 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. And then 30 can be rewritten as 2 times 3 times 5. Okay, so that's the first part of simplifying, writing out the prime factors of the numerator and denominator. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to cancel like primes. And so what that means is for every number that is the same on the top and the bottom, we're going to cancel one of each. So I see 1, 2 on the top and 1, 2 on the bottom. So I'm going to cancel these two out. I also see 1, 3 on the top and 1, 3 on the bottom. So I'm going to cancel those out. Notice that I did not cancel out the other 2's because there are no other 2's on the bottom. I can only cancel out one of each at a time. If there were more 2's on the bottom, then I could cancel out the 2 2's remaining in the numerator, but I can't. Similarly, I can't cancel out a 5 in the denominator because there's no corresponding 5 in the numerator. And so what we're left with is our fraction is now 2 times 2 times 5. Which, since we can't simplify anything else out, 2 times 2 becomes 4. The bottom remains 5. And so in this case, 24 out of 30 is the same as 4/5. Which I think as we learn later with percentages and decimals, we'll also know that this is 0.8, or also known as 80%. But you don't need to learn that right now. But both of them are the same. They're 0.8, 4/5, 24 out of 30. They're all equivalent to each other. Okay. The next thing we're going to learn in this video is improper fractions. And so improper fractions, and I'll use my text system here. Improper fractions I missed an N, are fractions in which the numerator is bigger than the denominator. Okay, sounds pretty simple. And in a way, it kind of is. I mean, overall, I think it is pretty simple once we get the hang of it. So, an example of an improper fraction is 15 over 7. Clearly, 15 is bigger than 7, and therefore it's an improper fraction. We're used to seeing where the numerator is smaller than the denominator, but in this case it's the opposite. It looks a little weird, and generally they are considered to be a little weird. But in this case, improper fractions are just a number we can work with. There's other examples too, and I'm going to give you a few more. There's 35 over 9. There's 115 over 12. I mean, they can get to be any type of number. There's also 78 over 63, which are two very weird numbers, or two very odd numbers. But yet they're still improper fractions. And so, as mathematicians realized, they really do not like working with improper fractions. So they created the concept of a mixed number. And so we're going to take 35 over 9 here, and we're going to convert it to a mixed number. But first, I need to tell you what a mixed number is. So back to a definition. A mixed number has a whole number and a fractional part. Again, sounds kind of simple, or in this case it may sound also kind of weird. It can be both weird and simple depending on who you are. When I first learned about mixed numbers, I found them to be completely odd. But as I went more through my mathematical career, I found them to be rather nice. But here's a very common example of a mixed number is 4 and 5/9. That's a common example of a mixed number. It has a whole part, and then it has its corresponding, and I'll use yellow for this, fractional part. Okay, that's what a mixed number is. And so now we're going to talk about converting an improper fraction to a mixed number. And for that, it requires another definition. Okay, so, or maybe not a definition, but it requires some words. To convert an improper fraction, and I typed that wrong. To convert an improper fraction to a mixed number, we divide the denominator into the numerator. Okay? So to go from an improper fraction to a mixed number, we divide the denominator into the numerator. I'll show you this with our example. We're going to use 35 over 9. And so, actually, I'll move this up so that way we have it at the very top. So we have 35 over 9, and I actually want to use white instead. Okay, 35 over 9. So we're going to divide the denominator into the numerator, which means 35 is going to go inside the house, and 9 is going to be left outside. Now in this case, 9 times 2 is 18, 9 times 3 is 27, and 9 times 4 is 36. So clearly 36 is too big, so we're going to choose that 9 goes into 35 3 times. 9 times 3 is 27. And 35 minus 27, what's that? This becomes a 2, this becomes 15. 15 minus 7 is 8. And 2 minus 2 is 0. Since we have nothing left over, 8 is our remainder. And so we get free remainder 8, as we would usually write it back in elementary school. However, since we're dealing with a mixed number now, we can write this as 3 and 8/9. And that is our mixed number. So in short, 35 over 9 is equal to 3 and 8/9. Nice. Okay. Now there's one last thing. I told you how to convert an improper fraction to a mixed number. There's also a way to take a mixed number and convert it to an improper fraction. And so in order to do that, it's really more by example. There's not too much of a definition here. But to convert from a mixed number to an improper fraction, I will perform the following set of operations. I'm going to take 5 and 2/7 as my example. What I'm going to do, between the 5 and the 7, I'm going to multiply. Whatever number that becomes then, I'm going to add 2 to it. Okay, so first I'm going to multiply 5 and 7, and then I'm going to add the numerator. So 5 times 7 is 35. I'm then going to take 35 and add the numerator. And I'm going to get 37. And then at the very end here, 37 is going to become my new numerator. So it'll be the new number on top. Oops. Small typo. Of my fraction. And then the denominator, the 7, is going to remain the same. It'll be on the bottom here. And so we are left with 35 over 7. 37 over 7 is our answer. Okay, that is converting a mixed number to an improper fraction. Another more general way to think about it, and this is a bit of a stretch, but another more general way to think about it is if I have my whole number. So I'm going to write this in terms, whole number. I have my fraction. I have my numerator on top. And I have my denominator on the bottom. We first multiply the whole number and the denominator. The whole number and the denominator. Figure out whatever number that is, and then add the numerator back. So step 1, and I will use orange for this. So step 1 is multiply the whole number times the denominator, and that will give you a new number. Step 2 then is to take the number you got in step 1 and add the numerator. Okay. Step 3 then is whatever number you got in step 2. So the number from step 2 is then your new numerator, sorry. And the denominator from your original fraction remains the same. Okay, and that's how you go from a mixed number to an improper fraction. We'll have more examples of it in the next video, but for this video, that is it.